Galileo Galilei, often called the father of modern science, was born on February 15,
1564.
to Vincenzo Galileo and Giulia Monti. He was the first of 6 children and lived a life of luxury since his father was of the noble class. At an early age, his father discouraged him from studying theology and directed him towards the medical field. But as Galileo grew and started to see the world for himself, he realized that his true passion laid in the field of mathematics rather than those that his father desired. He soon became extremely successful in the mathematical field and even became the chairman of mathematics at the University of Pisa in 1589. Along with becoming a chairman of a university, Galileo also racked up a myriad of other achievements, such as designing a telescope and discovering new planets such as Saturn and Jupiter. Through his discoveries, he was able to make improvements on the heliocentric theory, which allowed him to become a major player in the scientific revolution, as he drastically challenged the doctrine of the church and broke old conventional ways of thought. After teaching for a few years at the University of Pisa, he moved on to the University of Padua, where he became a professor in mathematics. During his time at Padua, Galileo began to experiment with the speed of falling objects. After conducting his experiment, he used his data to develop what was known as the law of falling bodies. This stated that objects that are falling are not affected by their masses or their weights, but rather by the air resistance. This was demonstrated when he dropped 2 masses off the Leaning Tower of Pisa. After he had conducted the experiment, his results astonished him as he discovered that the 2 objects with different masses accelerated at the exact same pace. This directly went against Aristotle's theory of gravity, which stated that objects would fall at speeds relative to their masses. Due to his new law, the church and other contemporaries of Galileo turned on him with vengeance, since his law directly contradicted Aristotle's theory. In Galileo's time, Aristotle was what was viewed as somebody who knew everything, and he was greatly revered by the church, philosophers, and scientists alike. Opposing him was essentially social suicide. After proving his law of falling bodies, Galileo improved the telescope and spent much of his time observing the moon and the stars in the sky. From his observations, he concluded that the moon was not perfectly smooth, contrary to popular belief. Instead, he claimed that the moon had craters and hills. After observing the moon, Galileo turned his attention towards Jupiter. After observing Jupiter for some time, Galileo noticed that there were 3 stars next to the planet, forming a straight line. Of course, these stars were moons, and that made Galileo think that if there were moons not revolving around the Earth, would it be possible that Copernicus' idea that the sun was at the center of the solar system was correct? Galileo gathered all of his observations and published his findings in his first book titled Sidereus Nuncius. Of course, the church and philosophers of the time denied his observations and instead claimed that it was Galileo's telescope that had hills. Furthermore, Galileo, with the aid of his telescope, also discovered that Saturn had rings. After his book Sidereus Nuncius, the church ended up banning all of Galileo's works for being heretical, but Galileo continued to publish books. His next book was titled Dialogo sopra I due massimi sistemi del mondo, Tolemaco e Copernicano, which talked about the Ptolemaic and Copernican systems. Since Galileo directly went against the church's orders, the Pope ordered for Galileo to appear before the Inquisition in Rome and face a trial. However, Galileo confessed that he was wrong after being threatened with torture. The Pope then allowed for Galileo to be in house arrest in his own home outside of Florence. Galileo then continued to write books on science, such as a book on force and motion, until his death, which was finally in 1642.